So I think we all recognise that, that the people we look to unlock the potential of others is those people in leadership roles. And you think about it for yourself, right? You know, when you've got a really great boss, they unlock something inside you, that they help you do extraordinary things. But on the contrary, when you've got a really bad boss, it doesn't just impact your work, it impacts your entire life. So recognising this, I think we can all see that for years, organisations, businesses have been investing huge amounts of effort and money to try and develop leaders. And this is with the aim to improve performance and help their people be more engaged, more happier at work. And as I've been watching this over the 20 years of my career, I've recognised that in spite of all that effort and money, I've actually seen very little which has created the type of positive, sustainable change that we need and that we're looking for. In fact, I think even worse than that, in spite of all that effort and money, in trying to get the leaders to do the things that we need them to do, I've seen what I would recognise as reasonably good leaders, good people, in the blink of an eye, do the wrong thing for no logical reason. And so all of that got me thinking, right? If we're spending all this time and effort and money on trying to get people to do the right thing, and yet leaders in the blink of an eye would do the wrong thing, why don't we find out what's actually triggering this behaviour, the wrong behaviour, and actually get really tapped into that? Because from my perspective, there's clearly a huge amount of power that's driving that behaviour. And so that's exactly what I did. I went on this journey to understand what really drives human behaviour, and this is what I discovered. Regardless of whether people are doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or a combination of both, as we all do as human beings, the fact that I came to realise is that these people in leadership roles are ultimately human beings leading other human beings. And although that seems incredibly obvious, it's something that we don't properly acknowledge. And so from that perspective, I then focused my efforts and my journey on really understanding and seeking to embrace what does it mean to be a human being. In seeking to understand and embrace what it means to be a human being, leading other human beings, I discovered three simple yet immensely powerful questions. And those questions are these. It starts with the simple question of, who am I? Which is all about the sense of identity that I adopt as a leader and as a human being. Then it's, why am I here? Which is all about what's important to me in this moment or for all moments of my life. And if that's who I am and that's why I'm here, the third question then is all about, how do I direct my energy? And it's, how will I lead and live? And as I said, this is all about how will I direct my energy and attention in a more mindful way. And so we have, who am I, why am I here, and how will I lead and live? And I believe that the mere contemplation of those questions helps us connect better to what it means to be a human being. And ultimately, for those people in leadership roles, it helps us better connect with our own sense of being human and ultimately unlock our human potential. And then it helps us and equips us to unlock the potential of those people around us. And these questions don't operate in isolation. They are in a constant state of evolution and flux as we grow and develop through our life. And they are constantly working with each other and influencing each other in this virtuous cycle. So the three questions are very simple, as you can see, but they're immensely powerful. But why are they so powerful? The only way to explain that is to really describe the human condition. Now, the classic way of describing what it means to be human is using the iceberg analogy. And as we see with any iceberg, there is an element above the surface and below the surface. And it's very classic to describe human beings in that way. What sits above the surface is what we call behaviour. And it's what people say and do. And when we're interacting with people, when we have relationships with people, that's what we often react to, what people are saying and doing. But actually there's something below the surface. And what's below the surface is what I like to call motive. And that's values, beliefs, and fears. And so when we're interacting with people, if we're able to just take a pause and suspend our reaction to their behaviour, what's above the surface, just for a moment, we can ask, well, what's really going on there? What's causing them to behave in that way? And that helps us start to get to terms with what their motive is. And this is where the majority of models stop. And I started to realise that actually there's something more than just those two elements if we're looking at what does it really mean to be a human being. Because I started seeing good leaders, people I respected, compromise their values for reasons that I just couldn't understand, that didn't, again, make any logical sense. And so I started to realise there was something deeper that sits at the core of the human condition. And that is what I like to call our human dilemmas. And these human dilemmas, as they become activated, they influence the formation of our motive and how our values, our beliefs and fears are created. Then they influence the creation of our ego and ultimately get distorted into our behaviour. And so it's these human dilemmas that are ultimately driving every aspect of who we are and how we engage with the world, and ultimately our success and fulfilment as a human being. Now, I appreciate when you look at that, it kind of makes sense, hopefully. And when you start to look at the human dilemmas, go, okay, well, hopefully they make sense in terms of how they're driving the formation of our motive and our behaviour. But actually, if we're going to start to understand them, we need to get to the core of what are these dilemmas. And I have to warn you at this moment, this is where it gets a little deep. At the end of the day, we are human beings. There is something going on inside us that we need to understand. So the human dilemmas are a set of inescapable dimensions that define our human existence. And although I don't think they're unique to our species as humans, I think their combination and the interplay between them is absolutely what makes us human. So if we start to explore these dilemmas, the first one is mortality. I warned you they were going to be deep. And so whether we like it or not, we are mortal creatures. This means that our concern for our survival and our security is ever present. And there's plenty in the news today which is reinforcing this to us and reinforcing our need for survival and the fact that that is very real. And whilst our concern for mortality may not always be about our physical mortality, it also translates into concerns about job security or physical and financial well-being. The second of the dilemmas is identity. As human beings, we're aware of how we show up, especially in our physical presence, and how people perceive us. In fact, we're being constantly bombarded with messages about how we should look and who we should be. And what I find, especially in talking to people, this often leaves us feeling really confused about, well, who am I really? The next dilemma is one of meaning. As human beings, we are meaning-making creatures. We need to find that reason why for why things happen, and we're always looking for it. We need to find that answer. In fact, we're so desperate for meaning that when we can't find the answer for why things have happened, Yeah, we make one up. We say things like it's fate or it's Murphy's Law. And then the final dilemma is one of freedom. And whether, again, we like it or not, as human beings, we are free to choose. We're free to choose how we spend our time and what we do each day. And in fact, this dilemma is so present that even if we're trying to avoid choosing by not making a choice, that is still a choice. And so these are the human dilemmas that ultimately create our motive and drive our behaviour. And when we recognise that, we can recognise that we need to better understand them and better embrace them. Now, the real challenge with the dilemmas, and the bit that I think makes them more complex, is the fact that there is something that binds them all together. And that is the fact that as human beings, we are isolated, single individuals. And what I mean by that is no matter how close you get to another person, and even if you're relying on their opinions to inform how you exercise your freedom, how you make choices, you are still having to grapple with these dilemmas by yourself and for yourself. Now, I get that they're deep, and I get that they sit at the core, and I get they're not things that we classically like to talk about or discuss, and that's fine. But it's important to recognise that even if we don't like talking about them, they are the thing that's driving us. And what's more, they're inescapable. We can't avoid our human dilemmas. They are part of what makes us human beings. And because they influence every aspect of who we are, actually, to really achieve success and fulfilment in terms of what we're after for our own lives, then we've got to find a different way of embracing them and engaging with them. So, if our human dilemmas are ever present and we can't escape them, rather than trying to suppress them or ignore them or avoid them, we've got to find a different way of embracing them. And for me, what that tells us is that actually, why don't we use them in a more meaningful way? Why don't we use them to help us embrace what it means to be a human being and embrace how we unlock our own potential? And then as leaders, how do we help embrace the human dilemmas so that we can get better at unlocking the potential of others? And so to really embrace the human dilemmas, I don't think we need to dwell on them, and they're not things that you really want to spend your time dwelling on. I also don't think that we should get lost in their true influence. Instead, what we need to do is we need to learn how to ask the right questions. And the right questions are simply these. As we've discovered, the first question is, who am I? And this question relates to our identity. Asking this question helps us be more conscious about the choices we're making, about who we authentically want to be and how we want to show up. But by asking, who am I? We can start to create a different definition for our own sense of identity, and we can let go of our beliefs about who we should be or what people are telling us to be and start to focus on who we authentically want to be. The second question, as we've seen, is, why am I here? And that's all about a sense of meaning. Asking this question really helps us get to terms with, well, what's important for us? You know, not just in each moment of our life, but for all moments of our life. Because actually, if we start to ask that, then we start to understand a deeper meaning and purpose for what we're doing in any particular moment, or as I said, for all moments of our life. And so, if who I am relates to identity and why I'm here relates to our sense of meaning, then the third question is all about how we exercise our freedom, how we direct our energy. And as I've shown, that is all about how will I lead and live. You know, as human beings, we are not perfect. And I've struggled to find anybody who actually is. We make mistakes, we get things wrong, our minds drift. But actually, by asking the 3 questions and getting really clear on the sense of identity that you want to adopt, really clear on why you're here and that sense of purpose, this 3rd question actually helps you start to focus your attention and energy in a different way. It helps you recognise when you're drifting away from what's important to you and the identity you want to adopt, and it helps you bring yourself back. And this is what I call a mindful practice. Because if we are mindful about how we're directing our energy, then actually we can be more intentional and more effective in where we invest our time and attention to help us achieve what we want to achieve. And by being mindful and adopting it as a mindful practice again, we can recognise when we're drifting away from it and just bring ourselves back. And that's what a mindful practice is all about. Tapping into our human dilemmas, using the 3 questions gives us 2 things. The first thing it gives us is it gives us a different path for unlocking our own potential. And this is so that we can achieve the success and fulfilment that we want for our own lives. The second thing that it gives us is it gives us a different path for making a contribution to those people around us, the community of people around us. And this is about helping them unlock their potential. And so what binds the 3 questions together is this concept of the paradox of purpose. And that paradox says that actually our sense of purpose and fulfilment is deeply personal to us, but it can only be fulfilled by extending beyond us and making a deeper contribution to those people around us, the community around us. And ultimately, I think that's what it means to be a human being as a leader, leading other human beings. So as humans, we are complex, magnificent, vulnerable creatures, whether we like it or not. And we're definitely not perfect, and I'm yet to meet anybody who is. But without understanding what it means to be human, and what it means to be a human leading other human beings, we allow these human dilemmas to drive our motive and drive our behaviour. Now, once we understand their presence and what they're all about and how they're driving our behaviour, we don't necessarily need to dwell on them. And I don't think it's actually healthy for us as human beings to dwell on them. But if we're going to unlock our own potential and if we're going to start to make a different contribution to those people around us through unlocking theirs, I think there's 3 simple questions that we need to ask. And they are, who am I? Why am I here? And how will I lead and live? Because I think it's through these questions and the constant contemplation and asking and answering of those questions that we find our path to success and fulfilment that we're actually after.